hear anywhere else. The joint session of Congress and the Senate are meeting on January 6th. Joe Biden is not president-elect until then. One America's Pearson Sharp has more.
No matter what the mainstream media tells you, Joe Biden is officially not the president-elect. Average Americans see headlines like this everywhere they turn, and they lose hope. But there is still reason to hope. No matter what the media says, Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anyone else will not be president-elect until the electoral votes are counted by the joint session of Congress on January 6th. Until that time, and considering the massive scale of voting fraud being reported, it is irresponsible for any journalist or news organization to declare that Joe Biden is the undisputed winner. Constitutional lawyer Bruce Fein spoke with One America News, and he said it's quite possible for the joint session of the House and the Senate to reject sufficient electoral votes for Biden. Monday's certification of the ballots means nothing, especially since Republicans in key battleground states also submitted their votes certifying President Trump as the winner. With two sets of electors, state legislators in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, New Mexico, Nevada, and Arizona, the majority of which are controlled by Republicans, by the way, will have to choose which electors to send to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. It's also worth mentioning that last week, a committee met and was tasked with announcing who the official president-elect is. They couldn't do it. Called the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, their first order of business is always to pass a resolution declaring who is the president-elect. But this time, when they put it to a vote who was president-elect, they deadlocked. 3 Democrats to 3 Republicans. This has never happened before. It's the first time in the committee's history that they haven't declared a winner. Furthermore, come January 6th, if one House member and one senator object to the certification, which could be based on the voting fraud or any other reason, then Congress must decide the winner. If they can't come to an agreement, then they must fall back on the 12th Amendment for a contingent election. The vote would then be per senator, with Vice President Mike Pence, as the president of the Senate, being the deciding vote if necessary. The House will also need to vote with only 1 vote per state, meaning the Republicans will have 30 votes while the Democrats will only have 20. This is a very real and very possible scenario that we could see unfold this January. And it's not like this hasn't happened before. Democrats scream and shout about how President Trump is not conceding and that's a threat to our democracy. But back in 2016, Democrats were doing the same exact thing. Democrats in the House objected to the electoral votes for Donald Trump in a handful of critical battleground states, including Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, Texas, Mississippi, and both North and South Carolina, all with the goal of overturning the election. They did it again back in 2005 with Senator Barbara Boxer trying to strike down the electoral votes in Ohio to keep George Bush from winning. So, Democrats today have no ground to stand on and accuse anyone of violating the Constitution for doing the same thing they did in the very last election, something that is provided for and made explicit in the Constitution. For all these reasons and more, One America News will officially not be calling Joe Biden the president-elect. And aside from the Epoch Times, which isn't calling the election yet either, you won't hear that anywhere else. We are the only broadcast news network out there with the integrity to report that this election isn't over. Fox News caved, to no one's surprise, but so did all the other so-called conservative media organizations, including Breitbart and even Newsmax. They've all called the race for Biden, but One America News won't. Until all the mountains of fraud are resolved, this race isn't over. And there must be no doubt that we have a president who won honestly, and not by stealing the voices of over 75 million Americans. For For One American News, I'm Pearson Sharp.